The end of a set is usually...
They have to sell drinks in between. And
I never think about selling drinks. I don't drink myself.
Oh, yeah,
so,
okay.
You know. But...
club situation.
Yeah, clubs. I mean, yeah, I really, you know, I approach each set as an individual kind of a entity in itself, so...
After all these years, you know, we had a couple of sentences according to your story in the first set. And the second set, we have to continue with the story of Bob Berg, mentioning big names that you work with, and they're all familiar with, for example, Horace Silver. He's one of the personalities in the history of jazz. And,
yeah, oh, very much, yeah.
Yeah, so tell us the story. Horace Silver situation.
Well, Horace
very
Silver
educational, you know, so everything you would say, they will appreciate. You know.
Okay. Yeah,
they're young anyway, but they're young anyway, but they'll know what you're talking about.
They're young, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, well, Horace Silver was the first, for those of you who know Horace Silver, when I was growing up, I was listening to Horace Silver when I first got introduced to jazz. So actually, one of the first records I got was a Horace Silver record. So I always liked his music, especially the way he presented a band and the way his personality was so strong within the music, his compositions, his playing. And it was actually the first gig I had was with Horace Silver. So basically, Horace Silver needed a saxophone player, and different band leaders find musicians different ways. Some band leaders, they go and they listen to guys in clubs. Miles did that. He would go to clubs and listen to guys play and then, you know, decide on somebody. But Horace used to audition people, so basically he called me to an audition, and he liked the way I played, so I got the gig. I was 21 at the time, so.
So it was hard for you to join the guys that had a experience?
No, not at all. It was very easy. I mean, my idea of musical situations throughout my whole career has been to try to always play with somebody that I could learn from. In other words, you know, I always wanted to place myself in a situation, in a musical situation, with knowledgeable people, you know, great players, and consequently, hopefully, I could learn something from them. I mean, I'm constantly learning. To me, playing jazz and music in general is a learning experience, as well as a spiritual experience. It's both, you know, it's intellectual and spiritual. So I always try to put myself in situations that were rewarding on both of those planes, you know.
If we're talking about the piano players, we start with Horace Silver, and on the other hand, we have Chick Corea. They're two different planets.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Although, in some ways, you know, they're very different planets, but their personalities are both very strong. So, you know, of course, every musician brings something else to the music. And, I mean, I also played with Cedar Walton for some time, and he also was a strong personality in terms of the way he put the music together. You know,
when you mentioned Cedar Walton is a kind of a missing guy, touring and so on. So,
yeah, well,
you know,
Cedar's
in Europe, I have to tell you, we're missing Cedar.
I think he's around. I think he's around. Anyway, when I was with Cedar, the band was really good. Billy Higgins was playing drums, and Sam Jones was playing bass, so I learned a lot from them also. And, yeah, I mean, somebody like Chick, I mean, I learned, volumes playing with Chick. It was an incredible experience.
When people are saying, okay, Chick Corea, and one hand is Chick as a piano player, as an artist, and in the other hand, you have a Scientology, you know, how you relate to this, being with somebody who's, you know, doing this thing?
Well, you know, the year I played with Chick for 3.5 years, and
excuse me, Chick Scientology, you know.
Chick Scientology.
Yeah,
well,
yeah, right. No, I'm a part of this since I met Chick in early 70s.
Right.
And it was always a part of it. You
right.
know, Stanley Clarke and Lenny White, all this kind of thing.
But my point is my point is that, you know, Chick Corea, the person, and Chick Corea, the musician, I got, you know, to be very good friends with. In terms of his beliefs regarding his, you know, his life within Scientology, we didn't discuss that. You know, we respected each other's ideas, and we exchanged some concepts, but Chick and I have talked more about movies and I mean, on you know, when we weren't working, you know, and music and food and all the things that people talk about. So I never really got involved in that aspect of Chick's life, you know. I mean, I love the guy. He's great. He's a great guy, and he's a fantastic musician, and he's a really beautiful person too. Regarding the other, I can't say. I have my beliefs. He has his, and it never was a problem. Never. Absolutely.
And the final thing, you know, I had a lot of guys come into this studio in the last, I don't know how many years since we're doing this show, and it was a lot that were a part of Miles's groups.
Right.
From Mike Stern to, you know, Jack DeJohnette, everybody, you know, it's a kind of standard question since Bill Evans was here, and, you know, really a lot of guys, because I'm a personal fan of Miles, and, you know, I use these opportunities to ask about Miles. And this is a question that people are asking you constantly about the collaboration with Miles and, you know, how that happened, that you became a part of Miles's band and so on. So tell us about this.
How I became part of the band. Again, as I mentioned before, Miles was the kind of guy who kind of looked for musicians in a... He wasn't somebody who would, you know, have auditions or try people out. I mean, Miles would hear somebody, and if he thought that they would work with his band, he basically would kind of just tell you to come to a rehearsal. I mean, that's what Miles did. I got a call from the management. They said, Miles wants you to come to a rehearsal. And I went to the rehearsal, and I was a little nervous, but I wasn't really nervous because I was already 33 years old. I mean, I had been around.
Where was the rehearsal?
In New York. In New York, in a rehearsal studio. And went to the rehearsal. We played a little bit. Miles just left. He didn't say anything. He didn't say, I mean, he didn't say a word. And I just thought, I mean, I didn't know what to think. And the next day, the management called me and gave me a whole itinerary of gigs. So I figured that I was working with the band at that point. I mean, it's actually, that story I've heard from many people. I mean, not only myself. You know, John Schofield, Chick Corea, some other people that I know. They didn't really, nobody ever told them, you know, you have the gig. It was just like they kind of just, you know, would give you an itinerary, and I guess you would show up. I mean.
No, believe me that I asked this question with almost everybody who played with Miles.
Yeah.
And some people refuse to talk about, you know, or they said a couple of words and a couple
well, yeah,
of
but there's a
sentences,
reason
you know,
for that. There's a reason for that. There is a reason for that, because when you have played with Miles Davis, people always want to know about Miles Davis. They want to know stories. They want insight into who Miles Davis was. And I always tell people, just listen to the records. That's who Miles Davis was. You know. I mean, that's all I can say. Also.
Yeah, you told us a lot right now in this few moments, you know.
Yeah, but even I don't know. I mean, I told you a lot, but like I say, he didn't say anything to me at the rehearsal, so I don't know. It's true. So, I have no idea.
All of a sudden, you know, the way that he was doing it, as I've heard, you go, you know, this is the guy, you know, Schofield in the first row, you know, being not a regular part of the band, and Miles said, just listen to whatever, you know. He became a part of the band.
Yeah.
Schofield, you know, the way that certain people came into.
Yeah, it was very mysterious. The whole process was mysterious, but that was part of Miles's personality.
You expected, actually, he expected that you know the tunes.
No, no. And when I went to the rehearsal, we just kind of jammed.
Whatever comes.
I mean, you know, we played some grooves and some, you know, a couple of, like a blues, and it wasn't like I was there, you know, for him. I didn't feel at all like he was checking me out. It was just like a jam session, kind of. That's what it felt like. So it felt, on one hand, very kind of relaxed, you know. I just played, and I guess it worked out, you know.
After the period that you spent with Miles, here is Bob Berg on his own. Record business, this tours, quartet, whatever kind of a story. Okay, here I am on my own. You were on your own before, but how that changed?
Well, actually, after Miles, when I left Miles's band, I started the band with Mike Stern. So I wasn't really on my own in that we had a kind of co-led band. But I started recording for little larger labels at that point, and but I never am particularly interested in only being a band leader and only being on my own. I mean, I really enjoy playing in other people's bands as much as anything else. If the music is good, it doesn't matter to me whose name is out there, you know. It's not really that important. Even if it's not my name, it's not that important, you know. It's just you need it to, you know, have a gig. What's most important is the music, you know. I mean, always, I try to focus on that. I try to stay focused on that. If I start thinking about the business and about all the other bullshit that you have to deal with, I try not to think about it, you know.
Okay. We're talking about music, and what is your idea now, 2001, you know, what America gives a jazz musician, I don't mind, whatever you put it, you know, how do you feel the support from the government, support from the United States? Okay, here we have a couple of heroes, we have a couple of great musicians that are working in the so-called jazz field, you know. Tell us about support. Is there any, or how it looks like now?
There isn't really any support. I mean, I never saw any. Actually, I did a couple of tours for the State Department. But in terms of, no, there's no support from the government for the arts, particularly in America. I mean, artists have to make it on their own. I mean, whether they're musicians or painters, visual artists, or composers, I mean, you're basically dealing with the capitalist system, you know. So, yeah, there's not that much, no.
Okay, because I'm asking, you know,
I don't get any support.
Okay, I'm putting myself in the situation of a great jazz musician from the United States, and all of a sudden you have coast-to-coast tour from New York to San Francisco, LA, and, you know, and all of the things that happens in between, you know, how that looks like.
Well, there's not much happening in between. I mean, you know, it's like...
This was the question, you know,
well, yeah,
because the people say, okay, United States, wherever I go, this is a jazz. We have, you know...
Well, I mean, yeah, but people that live in America and people that know about America know that, you know, jazz is not a very popular music in America, even though it's the country that kind of gave birth to it, obviously. I mean, we all know that. But yeah, at one time, and I was talking to the guys in the band, you know, I think at one point during this tour about, I was talking to Jonathan at one time, because Jonathan's 23 years old, 24. At one time, there were clubs all over America where you could play jazz. You could work your way from New York to San Francisco, and you could stop in towns all along the way. That's what we used to do. We used to drive. You know, you'd drive from New York to Detroit, and then you'd play in Detroit for a week. So every place you played, you kind of played for a week. And it was a very good opportunity to really develop the music. You know, you didn't have to move every day. You didn't have to have different sound every day. Musicians really lived together. And they lived their daily life together, and they also lived their music together. In a certain way, it was a really golden age, you know. I caught the end of it, because it was already over by the early 80s. But when I first got on the scene, it was still happening. And it was great. It was fantastic, you know. You know, I mean, you'd always be together. It was really family kind of situations. And it doesn't exist anymore. So now it's like, you know, you play a gig in New York, you play a gig in Chicago. Once in a while, universities have jazz, but, I mean, we're competing with pop music, basically. I mean, jazz has to compete in the same milieu, you know what I mean, as any other music. In other words, the only way you can pay for it is to have people come to hear it and buy the records. But jazz is like such a small part of the record business, I think, I hear. I don't like to talk about the record business anyway.
Oh, okay. I'm not
but we don't sell billions of dollars worth of records like, you know, because we don't have the advertising, and it's art music. It's not entertainment. It's music that touches people on a deeper level. It's not something that you put on that's 2.5 minutes long that has a video to go with. You know, people can't even listen to music anymore. They have to see a video